Hello and welcome to a third installment of Freestyle Torah, where it's a bit more advanced this, so I'm not over-explaining any ideas. I'm just going through the different verses from the beginning of the Torah, from Genesis. We're still in Genesis 1, and just giving different ideas, maybe basic ideas, and maybe going a bit deeper, as we tend to do. Okay, so let's get straight into it. We finished off on the third day last time. So we spoke about the first day. God created many things, but primarily we think about it in terms of the light and the dark and day and night, right? Obviously that's not the physical day and night which we have now, because there wasn't any sun or moon there. That's on the fourth day, which we're going to speak about soon. We've got the concept of day and night, and we said that really it's the light of the first day was the Oragon, was the light of the world to come, the divine light which we bask in the world to come. Then we had the second day. We explained number 2. We spoke about what the concept of number 2 is: separation, division, machalokis, arguments. We had the high and the lower waters, where it's the idea of like once something's been detached, the lower world has been detached from the source now, and they're longing to come back. And the third day we've got that sort of the synthesis. That's when you've got the land. The land is gives you ability for people to exist. So you've got the foundation for existence now. So people can exist, which happens only on the sixth day. And then people, through working on the ground, the physical world, they can reconnect with the higher world, using this physical world as the vehicle. Okay, and we spoke about the root of the sin of Adam is that the earth itself sinned, so to speak, by producing trees which had fruits which were not the same taste as the tree. Of course, we know trees now have wood, you can't eat them, but the fruits are much nicer, much more delicious fruits. That's the idea that the earth is sort of hinting at sometimes the fruits can be more important than the source, than the roots, where the way God commanded them to do it is that the fruits and the tree should be equal. But that would mean that if you've got a tree, like the ghost, it's like the story of the goose with the golden egg, right? But the answer is that if you kill the goose, then you don't get the golden eggs anymore. But if it would have been proper, that the fruits, the ground would have produced trees which taste just as good as the fruits, then basically the golden goose is obviously eat the goose as opposed to the eggs, right? Because go to the root. That's the idea of the fruits being secondary to the roots. That's the idea. We are the fruits of God's creation, and God is the source of creation. That's like the roots. But the problem with that is, if you've got a tree and fruits which are essentially the same flavor, the same ta'am, the word flavor can mean reason. It means, what's the word? Mashmos, the same richness in meaning, right? The ta'am is a meaning of something as well as the flavor. Then if you're looking at man and God, and they're just as, from our point of view, they're just as real as each other, then obviously you go to the root, right? But because the fruits were nicer than the tree, now the Yetzer Hara, the evil inclination to think that the product is better or superior over the root, is implanted in the world, and therefore Adam has the temptation to think that he's more real than God. That's the idea there. And of course Adam was created from the earth, so the same earth which produced fruits which were superior to the trees gets ingrained in Adam's nature and human nature. Okay, so let's go to the fourth day now. We're going to see this theme carries on about the idea of what's more important, the source, the root, or the thing which is meant to be subservient to the root. Okay, let's have a look here. Okay, so this is the fourth day. God said, "Let there be lights in the sky to separate between day and night. And there'll be for signs and festivals and days and years, etc." You can look at the Rashi here, right, and it says that that's one purpose of the luminaries, the heavenly luminaries, is for time. So the idea you've got day and night now. But then there's another verse which says, "And there will be these luminaries in the sky in order to illuminate on the land." And we've spoken about this a few times on the Hanukkah lectures. The idea of the difference between the light of the first day and the fourth day. The fourth day's light is one which brings light upon the earth, right, like it says here, upon the earth. That means on the surface of the earth, right? That means it's a superficial light. That means you see things. The idea of seeing is the thing is revealed to you. But what's revealed to you with the fourth light? Only the superficial facade of an object. You don't see its spiritual essence at all. Whereas if you could look with the light of the first day, when you look at an object, you'd actually see the spiritual roots of it, like Adam was able to do when he names the animals later on. He didn't just see with the light of the fourth day, he didn't just see an orange animal with a lot of hair or whatever, which we know as a lion, right? The intimidating looking face and the claws, etc. He didn't look at the physical. He was able to see what was revealed to him was not just the superficial, it was the internal. So he could see the letters, even the letters, the spiritual energies which combined to create a lion. He was able to see them, and therefore he called the lion by its name, and by doing so connected the lion to its source. So he did a sort of a tikkun, a rectification there, about reuniting the physical with the spiritual, which is our job in this world. To take anything which is physical and reveal its connection with God in some way. Anyway, so that's the light of the first day, but the light of the fourth day is actually distraction, and it's dangerous, right? Even though it does present some sort of truth, right? It shows you precisely what something looks like on the surface, but that can hide the internal truth of something, because you get distracted by externals. The same thing with idolatry. You look at the external aspects of God's energies to the world, and you get fixated by them, and you forget that, God's running the show behind all these different forces, these angels, these luminaries, whatever it happens to be. It's distraction. Same thing with immorality. Yeah, person's meant to have relationships between men and women are meant to be something which is an internal sort of meeting of minds, of a real connection on a deeper level. But the facade, the physical facade, can be very distracting, and then you get disastrous consequences where people only look at the superficial side of things. They end up being promiscuous, and as opposed to understanding that marriage is meant to be something where you're finding the other half of your own being, because man and woman are essentially two halves of one soul. We spoke about this in the marriage lecture, I think. Anyway, so that's the dangers of the external light. And as we're going further away from the first day, things are becoming more and more, I guess, physical, more detached from that day one where God's oneness was still apparent and obvious. Okay, that's the difference between the first and fourth day. day's light. So we're talking about light of the fourth day. Now you're going to see an interesting pattern here. The first 6 days are you can split into two groups of three. So you've got the first day is the creation of light and dark. The second day it's the high and lower waters. The third day is the land. The fourth, fifth, and sixth day parallel, and they actually mirror those first three, but they're an extension of the first three. So just like we said, the first day is light, it's the source of light, but then you have a superficial light, and our job is to connect to the superficial light through the use the superficial light to connect to the internal light, and not to get distracted by it, to understand that the forces of the universe, like the sun, moon, the stars, and the zodiac signs, and all these different spiritual energies which come into the world, we're meant to recognize they're just expressions of God's light, which is the light of the first day. Right? So these are just basically physical manifestations or physical expressions of what was there on the first day. The same thing you're going to see on the second and the fifth day. The second day, we're speaking about the world was split into two waters, a higher waters and lower waters, right? What's the meaning of that? Where do you see life expressed in the physical world? From these inanimate waters, you see birds in the higher waters, the heavens, and you see fish in the lower waters, which is what was created on the fifth day. We'll see in a couple of minutes. And the sixth day, we have the land, which is the foundation for life on physical land. So what do we see created on the sixth day? The life itself. We see the point of the third day. The third day, you've got the arena for land, animals, mammals, human beings to exist. So the sixth day, you see the point, you see the expression, the revelation of the purpose of the third day. It's in order to have animals and humans existing on it. That's why on the sixth day, you have creation of the humans as well as the animals. Yeah, so you see a nice parallel there. So you've got light, waters, and land. Then you've got on that's first, second, third day. The fourth, you've got the expression of light, the expression of waters in the forms of the life forms, and you've got the expression of the land in terms of its life forms. And these correspond to the first six sefiros. Those who are familiar with Kabbalah, if you look at the human body, it parallels that as well, right? The first six sefiros, which we speak about out of the lower seven anyway, are Chesed, Gvur, Tiferes, that's right hand, left hand, torso, or kindness, justice, and the balance, or beauty, right? And then on the lower part of the body as well, you have Netzach, Hod, Yesod. Netzach is domination, Hod is subjugation, and Yesod is foundation, which is the balance of the two, right? And you have the two legs, and you have the reproductive area, right? So which parallels the two sides in the center. Again, then you've got a lower version of the two sides in the center. The lower part of the body is meant to express the higher part of the body. How do you express yourself? Let's say I'm very skillful with my hands. I can do all sorts of things. How do I express that in a different place? I need to walk to the other place and show and reveal my potential in other places. That's what the legs are. And if I want to show my expression of who I am, my personality, my powers, my skills in a different time period, that means I have to transport myself into the future. That is the reproductive organs, which takes a person, it gives people children, then he can continue in the future. Right, so you see the different aspects on the lower parts of the body are all ways to express who we are. We are essentially those three elements of Chesed, Gvur, Tiferes. Our head is actually the energy source which gives the ideals into the body, and the body is the one which actually can carry things out. But to carry out in a place which is outside of us, or physically or in time, we need to have the idea of projection to the future. Same with the first 3 days of creation. You've got the roots of expression there. You've got light, the sea, the land. But how do they actually come out in practice? That's through the 4th, 5th, and 6th day. Okay, I hope you understood all that. There's some beautiful ideas there. Okay, now you've got the God making. Let's go back to the verse 16 now. Right? God made 2 great luminaries. The great one is for day and the small one's for night. So there's a bit of a contradiction there. Rashi picks it up and he says that they were created equal to start off with. We're obviously talking about the sun and the moon, right? But because the moon complained and it says, well, you can't have 2 kings of the world, like a king of the daytime, king of the night, the sun and the moon, there can only be 1 king. So God says, right, fine, okay, you've spoken well, so you don't get to be the king at all then. The sun is the king. The deeper idea here is that, and that explains why it says originally the 2 great lights, because the sun and the moon were equal in power, right? But remember, the sun's still the sun, the moon's still the moon. They still have that relationship, that the sun is the one which exudes the light, which shines the light onto the moon, and the moon is the one which reflects it. But the moon was doing such a perfect job of reflection. If you looked at the moon, you get blinded by the moon, just like we would get blinded by the sun. It was like a perfect mirror. There again, the deeper idea which lies behind this is the idea of the source of light, which is God, being reflected in something which is just meant to reflect it. That means us, the physical body. We're meant to be expressions of that divine light. By doing the mitzvahs, by doing the commandments, we bring God's light through us into the world. So we sort of like we channel it out. So we reflect God's light into the world. Again, so you've got this interplay between the source of energy and the one which is meant to receive the energy and then bring it out onto a more physical, a lower level. Right? That's what the sun and the moon did originally. But then the moon said, oh, I want to be the king. What's that telling you? That sounds like saying, I want the receiver to be more important than the giver. So, God says, well, you got one thing right, but as soon as you want to be something, you've just destroyed yourself. It's a deep idea here. If you've got a mirror, perfectly shiny mirror, and you shine a very bright light on it, you get blinded by looking at the mirror. However, if someone decides to make this mirror very nice, let's draw pictures on it, let's draw a crown on it, decorate it, then it becomes its own thing, but then it loses its whole essence of being a reflector. It can't reflect anymore. So what happens? It becomes darker. You shine light in it anymore, it doesn't reflect. Or it's much dimmer, the reflection, depending how much you've added to the mirror. The idea of the moon is meant to be the sphere of Malchus. It's meant to be the idea of Malchus, which is the sphere, the attribute of God, which is meant to reveal. Right? Malchus, kingship, we spoke about this many times. And the idea is Leis lo megar maklum, as the Zohar says. It doesn't have anything from itself. It's meant to be totally barren, empty of its own ego. So when anything shines on it, my job is just to fulfill my mission. You want to bring light to the world, Hashem? Going back to the meaning of the metaphor, which is us and God. Right? God wants to reveal his light. We say, yes, I'm only here to reveal your light in the world. And by doing that, we become a pure channel to bring God's light in the world. However, if we act like the moon said, well, I want to be someone as well. I want to be the king. I don't like this idea of me being totally secondary, right? And inferior to God, right? Just like the moon didn't want to be inferior to the sun. So what's the natural result? Then you're recognizing yourself as something intrinsically, but that's false. because we can only exist only in as much as we're connected with God. So therefore, the more we try to exist, the more we become darker and further from God, and therefore, and that light which we thought, wow, look, the moon's shining a super bright light. People can't look at the moon. As soon as it wants to say, oh, look at me, it becomes not, it loses that subservient aspect to the sun. So it doesn't reflect anymore. It becomes its own thing, but that thing is less. Right? So that's the idea of the sun and the moon. Originally they're meant to be a perfect reflection. Then the moon wanted to say, no, I am something. So just like a mirror which has got a drawing or painting on it, it can't reflect anymore. And it becomes its own thing, and that ends up eventually also being the downfall of Adam. He thought that he existed independently of God to whatever extent. Like we've spoken about many times. Okay, let's carry on. Right, speak about the stars. Miss that out. And God put them in the heavens to illuminate on the land. Very interesting. I never noticed that. We already said this in verse 15. There will be 4 luminaries. They've got 2 jobs. One to be for calendars, essentially, and one to bring light on the world. Then we've got the whole thing about that God making the moon smaller, and God put them I see what's going on here. Right, the beginning of the day, God says, let there be luminaries in the heavens, and the next 2 verses are explaining the purpose of it. And then the next verse is God actually doing it. Right? Right, so it seems that he made them, and then after he made them, then he put them in the heavens to illuminate, like, and to fulfill the purpose. Purpose number 2, which is mentioned in verse 15, to illuminate on the land. And it doesn't mention, very interesting, and it doesn't mention the original purpose, which was to separate between the day and the night. Very interesting. Right? Or maybe that's alluded to in this verse. Right? To rule over the day and the night, and to separate between the light and the darkness. Maybe that's what it's referring to. But it reverses the order there. Very interesting. I wonder if there's anything there. I'm not aware of anything about that interesting repetition and reversing the order using different words. Okay, Vayalkim Kitov, and of course God saw it was good, and that was evening and morning on the 4th day. Let's move quickly on to the 5th day. I want to see if we get everything finished today. Right, and there should be in the water, there should have basically ocean life or water life, fish, and other water creatures, right? And the birds which fly above the land on the face of the heavens. Okay. And also, very interesting, and besides that, created the Taninim Agdolim, the great Taninim. Taninim is a type of, it says, Rashi says, Dogim Gdolim Shabiyom, great fish, so it's talking about like a massive fish, as opposed to the previous verse, Yishrutzu Amam Sheretz is usually something which is creepy, crawly, or a swarm. He creates the water shall swarm with swarming living creatures, but then you've got the bigger creatures which are obviously much fewer in number. The Taninim Magdolim, the great fish. The Taninim can also mean a snake as well. So I've heard, I think Rav Zamir Cohen says that actually this could be referring to giant lizards or amphibians, right? Which could be dinosaurs. Interesting. And anything else which is living, which is swarming in the waters, according to their kind, and every winged bird. And God saw it was good, and God blessed them, and He said, "Be fruitful and multiply." So now we've finally got living creatures on the fifth day, and now so He has to get them to function and multiply. Right? So He gave them a blessing, and that's why there's so many fish, because God gave them the blessing, and they just multiply. Rashi explains, I'm not sure any deeper meanings in this. There's always deeper meanings in Rashi. Unfortunately, I don't know any here. I say just read through that if you want. Also, the Tananim Gedolim, Rashi mentions Divrei Agodahu, Leviosan ben Zugo. Right? This is actually referring to the creation of the Leviathan and its wife, right? Its partner. Shebrom Zochor and Akeva. Right? He created them male and female. Vargas in the cave, he killed the female, and he assaulted it for the righteous in the world to come. We spoke about this at length in the lecture of, what was it? About dimensions of time, I think it was a very early lecture, so like the fifth or sixth lecture. The idea is the Leviathan comes from the word Levio, means to accompany, means to connect. So it's a type of, it's on the basic meaning, it's a massive fish. You could call it a whale or whatever it was. But according to the Agada, it's actually referring to two specific fish, or giant fish, and once you're going to the Agada level of interpreting the verses, then you can actually be speaking about spiritual concepts and actually not referring to anything physical. Right? Obviously, there's a physical meaning to it, but there's a deeper spiritual idea. The spiritual idea is these creations are the ones of connection with God down here in the world. That's the idea of the Leviathan being fish which live in the sea, but in the sea, not on the land. Remember, the sea we mentioned in the last lecture represents the world to come, right? And the fruits of the world to come is the Leviathan, like connection with God. That's what the world to come is. But God doesn't want us to have that experience in this world, or we lose our free will. If we experienced connection with God in this world, specifically through our doing good actions, then as soon as we do one good thing, we'd be overwhelmed by the pleasure of being close to God, and we wouldn't effectively have any real free will anymore, because we would just do all the right thing the whole time, because it's just, it's like we get conditioned to it. Right? Imagine if you press this button and you get a massive jolt of pleasure, and you press the other button, the avera, the sinning pleasure, the button of evil, and then suddenly you get a massive electric shock. Eventually we'd just only be pressing that button, the positive pleasure button. So God can't do that, because if we keep doing mitzvahs and then we lose our free will, the whole purpose of creating us in the world of darkness, where we have to reveal the light in the darkness, disappears, because everything will become obvious and we don't effectively have free will. The whole purpose of creation is to be like God, and we can only be like God by choosing to be like God. Free will, like we explained many times, the first three lectures on the channel, the Keystone lectures. So God has to, what does he do? He kills the female. The female is the one which gets revealed in this world much more, right? And he salts it for the world to come. That's when we get to experience it. The Medrash actually says, by the male, strangely enough, he neuters the male, so the male can't reproduce, but the male still exists. So the question is, if God just doesn't want them to reproduce, why do you need to neuter the male and kill the female? Surely once you kill the female, then the male being able to reproduce is meaningless, because it doesn't have a female partner to do it in. So the idea is, There's two aspects, two ways to connect to God. The male way and the female way. Let's say it like that. The female way is the revelation in the physical world of the light of God. That's through using the physical to connect to God. That is through doing physical mitzvahs, commandments with physical objects. That's called mitzvahs, commandments. And God completely kills that off. That means when we do a good action now, we do not feel the spiritual benefit, the spiritual experience of closeness to God. When we do mitzvah, when we pick up a lulav, the four species on sukkahs, or we sit in a sukkah, or we give charity, we feel good emotionally, but we don't get a sublime spiritual experience, right? When people feel very holy, that's not what feeling holy is. You're feeling good about yourself. That's an emotion, and it's based on your intellect that you know you're doing the right thing. Your emotions feel good. Feeling holy is something which most people don't really experience. It's something which is sublime, where you kind of transcend this world and you're attached to a higher reality. However, there is a spiritual way of connecting with God, where you connect to God not through the physical, but through the spiritual. How that works? By using your mind to connect with God. That's a spiritual aspect. That's a male aspect, right? The male aspect being the light itself, the female being the way that the light's expressed. Again, always the idea of male and female is male is the root of whatever you're talking about, and the female is the way it gets expressed and revealed in the world. Just like in a marriage, the potential is there from the husband, right? And the woman is the one who takes the male DNA and builds it and reveals it as a fully fledged human being, as a child. Same thing here. The light of the Torah, that's spiritual, that gets revealed through in the physical world through the mitzvahs. We take a physical object or your physical body. You do an action. You smile at someone. There's no physical object there, but there is a physical expression within the physical. Your mouth, the size of your mouth going up and looking at someone, making them happy. Right? Whereas Torah is totally in the mind. We're meant to speak out the words of Torah because there has to be some element of bringing the Torah into the physical world. So that's why it's important to say words of Torah even when we're studying and we're thinking. But the truth is that Torah is really a spiritual pursuit. And on that, the Medrash says that God neutered the male. That means it's still there, but it can't multiply. That means when a person learns Torah, that's one time a person can get a glimpse and a feel of what the spiritual world is, of what it's like to be close to God and feeling holy and real spirituality. It's only possible through learning Torah in this world. But again, it's neutered so it doesn't become overpowering. Again, to preserve free will. Okay. So some nice ideas there. Right? And the idea of eating the sukkah of the Berieshis, I was going to speak about it on sukkahs. I didn't want to make too long of a lecture. I ended up speaking about Gog and David, about the two different roofs: the solid roof, the physical roof, and the sechach, the root of the roof, which is basically trusting in God, because it's a flimsy roof. So we sit in the tabernacles outside. Yeah, spoke about the sun there, the external part of the sun, the internal part of the sun being the light of the first day, and God revealing that. There's also the idea of the Berieshis as well, about eating from that fish. That means that we're benefiting from that in the world to come, but it's hidden in this world, though, right? All comes into the same idea, but I'm not going into that now. Maybe another time, maybe next because we might speak about it. Right. So that is the creations of the fifth day. Right, is that right? All done? Right. Finally, the sixth day. This is one we've all been waiting for. Well, humankind has been waiting for, at least. Right? God says, let the land produce living creatures, and He created them to their kinds, according to their species, and also the creepy crawlies. Right? So you talk about animals, insects, all living creatures which dwell primarily on the land. We said that lizards or amphibians might have been created on the fifth day, possibly. Okay. And God said, let us make man in our image and in our likeness. What are you doing? They should dominate over the fish and the birds and the animals, the whole land. So God's essentially appointing man as the master of the physical world now. And that's pretty straightforward if you've been watching this channel, because the whole point of the world is just so we have tools in order to bring God into the world. God wants us to bring His divine light into the physical world, so He gives us animals, the earth, fish, everything, all the different things which exist in this world are there to be sanctified and to reveal God's light through. And by doing that, we become givers or conduits for God's light into the world. And by doing that, we become similar to God, who wants to be mashpia. He wants to emanate His light and imbue us with His divine light. So we become like Him because we're imbuing God's light into the world and into our bodies as well. So this is the pinnacle of creation now. So God makes man in charge of the world. We're the masters of the world. You can see that clearly, the way the world works. Interesting medrash here, right? The famous question, why does it say, Na'aseh Adam, let us make man in our image and our likeness? Yeah, so what's it mean, Na'aseh Adam, let us make man? Because God's teaching us humility, right? Right? Because remember we said that the angels were created on the second day. So now we've got a similar thinking, conscious being, which God's trying to make now, called the human being. The angels might get jealous because the angels are the only other thing in creation besides God which have a certain aspect of consciousness and self-awareness, right? Awareness of God, right? So he asks in his humility, he's not going to be dominating, because remember, God doesn't want to force Himself on the world. He wants everything to have free will. He wants to stay out of the picture and let the world run without His interference as much as possible, right? So He does the same with the angels, it seems here as well, right? Adam's going to be created in a very similar likeness to the angels. Therefore, He asked them, and we spoke, I think, on the Rosh Hashanah lecture this year. We spoke a bit more about this idea about the angels arguing with each other. Should you create man? Should you not create man? Then God creates them, because they've just revealed that man has good aspects and bad aspects. Oh, perfect, God says. So man has got both elements. He could be good, he could be bad. So that's exactly what I want. I want a being with free will. So he can choose good, and by choosing good, he gets to earn his way in the world to come. Right? And then Rashi explains more about this idea of different angels on the right, some are on the right, some are on the left. That means the ones who correspond. Remember, we spoke about what the right and left means spiritually, right? The right and left hand correspond to chesed and gevur. Chesed means kindness, means giving plentiful energy and goodness, whereas gevur means holding it back and controlling it, making people earn what they're doing, right? It's more strict. So you've got these angels who are saying, yeah, create man, and the other one's saying, No. He doesn't deserve it. He won't succeed in earning his right to exist. And we see other examples in Tanakh, in the Book of Kings, the Book of Daniel, similar idea, right? And Rashi points out, Nasodom, even though they didn't help God in the end creating, because only God creates the world and anything, right? And we have nowadays, I think I've heard it a few times from Christians actually, they say, oh look, NASA must be, there's a multiple Godhead or whatever they call it, the Trinity, yeah, right? Besides, how do you get three? Maximum is two here. There's no indication there's three going on. Anyway, but besides that, God still writes this in the Torah because He wants. It's so important to understand the concept of humility. That is the foundation of our path to perfection. It's humility. It's understanding that we are not important. Only God's important, right? We cannot exist even without God actively creating us and giving us everything. If God would stop for a moment, we're gone. Right? So the humility is however good, however clever we feel we are, it's God's giving you that. God created you like that. A bird doesn't become arrogant because it can fly. That's its nature. Right? The octopus looks at like an elephant, right? Say, you only got 4 legs, I've got 8. That's not a reason to be arrogant. That's what you need for your nature. Similarly with mankind, you have to be humble. So whether we're clever, we're rich, strong, whatever it happens to be, it's all a reason to thank God and realize that God's giving you all of it, as opposed to being arrogant. So this is a very important lesson, and it's so important that God even risks people making a serious mistake and thinking that there's more than one creator. Right? That person should ask permission from someone below him, and you shouldn't think that, oh, I know what I'm doing, because that person who's smaller than you, God created him in his situation for a reason. So you're not intrinsically greater than someone who's smaller than you. So God's doing this to teach us the lesson, right? And if it said, I will make man, then we wouldn't know that God's speaking with his based in his heavenly court, which is the angels, right? Rather in himself, right? And if you want to know the answer to the question, like everything in Torah, whenever you have someone who wants to twist the scriptures and say, oh, look what it means here, and then giving a false interpretation of one of the verses, look nearby, you'll see the answer. Amazing. Happens so many times. Okay, as it says in the very next verse, Vayivra Elokim es Adam, and he created man. It doesn't say Vayivra'u and they created. Vayivra. Even though Elokim is a plural. Right? We explained this another time. The name Elokim is plural because it means the master of all plurality, of all forces in the world. He's the master of all of them. But here it's absolutely clear that it's one being creating man. And what does it mean creating him in his image and in his likeness? So the idea is, we spoke about this many times again, the idea of the Tzelem Elokim. What does it mean, the image of God? The image and the likeness refer to a spiritual similarity and a physical similarity. The physical similarity, well, maybe we start with the spiritual one. That might be easier. The spiritual similarity we have to God is God has free will. We have free will, right? Okay, we have the power to affect reality, right? Just like God has the ability to affect reality. He brought existence into being. We have the ability to change existence, to change nature itself, right? We've got the ability to overpower God's foreknowledge in some respects, paradoxically. Of course, it's a paradox. We spoke about that in the free will and God's foreknowledge lecture, very early lecture on the channel. Yeah, with the Mobius strip, we went into this very in depth on the Yom Kippur lecture we gave this year. Beautiful idea. Yeah, we've got the ability to change the future, even though the future is fixed, and to change the past, even through our free will. Amazing idea. So that's the power, that's the tselem, that's the image of God, right? And the likeness, what does the likeness mean? That's referring to the physical, or it could be even the metaphysical as well, is that we're created in physically with 10 faculties. We've got 3 aspects to the head, 3 aspects to the torso, 3 aspects to the lower part of the body. Then maybe you have the 10th one, which is the back of the head, which is a 4th element of the intellect, right? Which is where the da'as, knowledge, connects with the physical, where you translate your thoughts into action. These are 10 sephiros essentially. So we are a physical manifestation, a physical reflection to the 10 spiritual energies which God uses to create and run the world. So that's what it means. And therefore, because we are connected and mapped on perfectly to those 10, whenever we do something here, right? So we try to bring good down here, God does the same, because we are basically twinned up with God, so to speak. So when we do good to someone, God does good to us, right? Because we are made with the same template, right? As God's template for running the world. Of course, God himself is above all that. So really these 10 spheres are just 10 expressions for him to relate with us. So we're created as a physical mirror to those 10 transcendent, totally non-physical energies, qualitatively different energies and characteristics. Good. Okay. Right, let's carry on. Right, so that's God creating us in his image. Then God blesses man and he says, be fruitful and multiply. Right, and then again, dominate over the world. Right, and very interesting here, it says it, don't want any feminists to get upset here, but please focus on the concept here. When it says v'chivshuha and rule over it, referring to the world, it actually doesn't have the vov. Usually this word would be v'chiv shu with a vov. Shu would be, as you see here, urdu. It would have that vov in between, over here, in between, just after this letter, right? Which would mean, and he will dominate over them, right? Or v'chiv shu, sorry, rather, they will dominate over it. They will dominate over the land, referring to man and woman, right? But you can also read, because of the missing vov, it's actually written in a way where you should read it v'chiv shoh, right? And he will rule over her. This idea of the male ruling over the female, right? That means it's man's job to get married as opposed to a woman's job to get married. Man's the one who's meant to express himself. The woman's just doing him a favor by getting married to him, right? And also, it's on a deeper level, this idea of the male aspect of creation has to dominate over the female aspect. That means the physical world should not be an entity in itself. It should just be a means of expression of a spiritual reality, of holiness, of spirituality, and that's represented by male and female. We gave a very early lecture about this, about the root of evil. What is evil? We said one approach was when what should be the primary, and when you got a partnership between two polar ends of a certain concept, and you have the primary one is meant to be revealed with the secondary one. Evil is when the secondary one dominates and the primary one actually takes a back seat, right? So like we spoke before earlier in this lecture about the idea of idolatry, the idea of immorality, is when the physical, that means the expression, the physical dominates over the spiritual. And when people, like a man looks at a woman, he looks at her physically, right? That's destructive, where he should be looking at the spiritual and the purpose of it, which is marriage, to produce life, to be a giver, right? And when it gets trapped by the physical dominates over the spiritual, that's where evil starts. Okay. And and God gives them food to eat. Basically, he says you can eat everything in the world, basically the fruits, the plants, but not the animals. He's not allowed to eat the animals. We're going to speak about this hopefully next time, if I remember. Right? And then God sees everything He's created, and He's very good, right? And it's very good. And it was Erev, evening and daytime, morning, on the sixth day. And Rashi points out, it says, it doesn't just say Yom Shishi, sixth day, as it does Yom Chamishi, fifth day. It's Yom Hashishi, the sixth day. I wonder if they've even translated that. Yeah, it says here, a fifth day, yeah? A fourth day. But here it says, very nice, I like this translation here, the sixth day, because alluding to what Rashi says here, is that the world is dependent and contingent on whether the Jewish people accept the Torah. Right? The 5 books of the Torah, represented by the letter Hey, which is the 5th letter of the alphabet. Hey is letter 5, corresponds to the 5 books of the Torah. Or Yom Hashishi, the 6th day, referring to the 6th day of the month of Sivan, which is the day where God gave the Torah. So either way, the world is dependent on Torah. Because remember, again, you see this pattern again. You see the physical. God's trying to tell us, make sure the physical is subjugated to the spiritual. So God we gave a whole lecture about this, the 10 commandments are the spiritual energy source of the 10 sayings which God creates, which we're learning here today. The 10 sayings that God used to create the physical world, they're all emanated, they're all reflections of all physical expressions of the 10 commandments somehow. We explained this in I think the Pesach lecture, Passover lecture we gave this year, about how all the 10s correspond to each other. Right, so the number 10, what we're saying here? Yes, right. So the idea of the whole of the physical creation, God saying, this is a shell, this is an expression. You have to connect it with a spiritual source. So therefore, when it comes to the giving of the Torah, God said, accept the Torah. If you don't accept the Torah, I'll reverse the world to Tohu Vavohu. That's stage 1. That's what happened day 1 before God created light. Yeah, because the whole point of the physical world is just meant to be a way of reconnecting with God, reconnecting with the spiritual elements, and we do that by the mitzvahs, the commandments, primarily the 10 commandments, which are the root of all the commandments, essentially. So if we connect up with them, then we fulfill the purpose of creation, right? If we don't accept the Torah, then what's the shell? Why you've got an external shell of creation without a life? It's like a dead body. There has to be life in the body. That is the Torah. The Torah is the soul of the world. So the Jewish people have to keep the Torah and or accept the Torah on the Shavuos when God gives it to them. That's a beautiful idea there. And we mentioned many times when they told me why to say very good, because here after the 6th day, God finally creates the forces of evil in the world as well. Right, created the snake on the 6th day, right, which is the tempter. It's meant to be the physical vehicle for the Satan, for the Satan, the accuser, the one which tempts, the seducer, the one who seduces man to do sin, right? And why is it very good? Because good means just God giving His goodness to mankind, but very good means it's not just a good where God gives something nice and we're a receiver. Very good means we transcend. The goodness we get is a transcendent God. We become like God. Tov Ma'oid. And it's interesting, the word Ma'oid is also the letters Odom, if you reverse the letters there. Yeah, Aleph Daled Mem is Odom, and Mem Aleph Daled is Ma'oid. right? So even in the word Adam, we have the idea of transcendence there. We've got the ability to transcend and be like God, and that's only through evil. Evil is essential. So the first and the third of the Keystone lectures, I hope you're all familiar with them, then you understand this idea very well. There has to be evil in the world, right? Because evil is the only way where we can have true free will, and we have something which we can bring up and sanctify and become good. If everything is good, there's nothing for us to do. We can't bring goodness into a place which is already perfect. There has to be a place where it's empty of goodness. That's why it's the ultimate good. It's very good. It's the good which lets us transcend and be like God. Okay, and let's finally finish off. Right, and we see Vayi'er Vayivoker Yom HaShishi. Look at the first two letters there. Yom HaShishi, that's a Yud and a Hey. Yom HaShishi, the 6th day. So Yom HaShishi Vayichulu Hashomayim. So that spells Yud K Vav K. And we see in verse 4, we see this name for the first time in the Torah. Yud and a Hey and a Vav and a Hey, the Tetragrammaton. That's the idea that the bridge between the 6 days of creation, which ends up on the 6th day, and then God finishes on the 7th day, that's the world to come, right? We're here for 6,000 years. The 7th millennium is the beginning of the world to come. So it's the 6 days which represent the days of working, the 7th days where we rest, where we reach our goal and we experience God, right? So the first 6 days are represented by the Yud and the Hey, the idea of the roots of the world to come. In fact, we're working on the spirituality aspect of the world, like we spoke about the Leviathan. Yeah, when we do Torah and mitzvahs now, we are actually bringing down the light into the world, but we don't experience it yet. So the physical manifestation of that Yud and the Hey is not apparent, right? The Yud and the Hey being the spiritual letters of God's name. The Vav and the Hey is how it's expressed in this world, right? These are the Todah Shemaim V'Aretz. These are the offspring of the heavens and the earth, if you want to put it like that. Or maybe it's just the earth part. Depends how you want to learn what the 4 letters of God's name correspond to exactly, different ways of lining things up. But the idea is that we want the Yud and the Hey to be expressed in the physical world. That's the Vav and the Hey, the lower 2 letters, which represent the lower world. And that's Shabbos. Shabbos is when all that spiritual energy and goodness and pleasure which we've been drawing down from God, actually we start to feel it and it gets expressed in the physical world. That's Shabbos. Shabbos is the idea of the expression. And we see some amazing ideas here. And that's the idea of the Yud and the Hey and the Vav and the Hey being the first letters of the last 2 days, the last 2 words of the creation and the first 2 letters of the Shabbos. And God finished, and it was finished, the heavens and the earth, everything in it. And God finished on the 7th day, everything which He did. And He rested on the 7th day. And He blessed the 7th day and He sanctified it. Right? Because that's the day where He rested, which God created lasos. Interesting, we've got these two words here. Borum is the idea of yesh ma'ayin, that's the idea of some ex nihilo, something from nothing, and lasos means actual physical manifestation. So everything's finished now. But look at this word here, vaychal, and He finished. These 2 letters, kaf lamed, vaychulu, and it was finished, and He finished. V'chol tzvam, and everything is done. Same 2 letters. Melachto, again, the kaf and the lamed. Yeah, that's expression. That's God carrying out His will. Right? Kol melachto. Again, kaf lamed words all over the place. Right. Right, and the word vaychal means to finish and to complete. It also means word kli. Kaf Lamed Yud is Kalim, vessels. This is the common denominator between all these ideas. What did God do on the seventh day? He made a vessel for everything to be manifest. Yeah, in the 6 days, we're just building up all that energy, but there has to be a place where all that energy shines through. That's Shabbos. Shabbos, the seventh day of the week. We enjoy the Shabbos. That's why we have nice things to eat on Shabbos. We enjoy ourselves on Shabbos. We have 3 meals. All the idea of giving us a taste of what the world to come is. We work hard in the 6 days of the week. We work on our midas, on our characteristics. We do the mitzvahs. And Shabbos, we finally, I had such a good week. The better our week, they say, the better your Shabbos is going to be. You'll enjoy your Shabbos more, the more holy and more spiritual the week is. We might not feel the pleasure of our mitzvahs in a week, but when it comes to Shabbos, you'll start to feel a bit of a glimpse of it, because God starts to reveal it on Shabbos. You even see that some people, some very holy people, you could see on their face. There was a story, I think someone was in a yeshiva, I can't remember which rabbi it was. Maybe it was the Manchester Rosh Yeshiva maybe, or maybe it was the Brisker Rov, I can't remember who it was. He went to the yeshiva and he saw the Brisker Rov, and then on Shabbos, he couldn't see it. Where was the Brisker Rov? I can't find him, right? He didn't recognize him because his face was so different. It was shining on Shabbos, right? Whoever the rabbi was, I'm probably getting the name wrong. But on Shabbos, literally, you can see it just like, to a certain extent, similar to Moshe's face was shining radiant with the spiritual light there, just making the physical shine as well. That's the idea of the spiritual shining through the physical, the lens. The body is meant to be the physical lens for the spiritual to shine out. Beautiful. That's what Shabbos is. Shabbos is the vessel to reveal. Remember, a vessel is a tool which you use to bring out the potential of something else. You don't buy a spanner and a screwdriver because you want to put them on your shelf to look nice, right? Or you don't make a little tower out of them, like a decoration. The whole point of tools is to take things which have potential, like this bookshelf behind me here, right? How do you make it? You've got pieces of wood here. Well, it's actually just loads of pieces of wood, to be honest. And then you've got, in the inside, you've got different screws, right, to fit it all together. But how did it start? It starts with different pieces of wood. You have to put them on top of each other, screw them in with a screwdriver or the Allen key here. It's IKEA, so everything's with an Allen key. The hexagonal sort of screwdriver, which you can use with your hand. The idea is of vessels are the conduits to reveal the potential of something else. And that's exactly what Shabbos is. Shabbos is Vaychulu, it's finished. You're finished now, because now you've unified everything together. You've got all the parts, right? That's the 6 days of the week, all the parts of the cupboard, let's say. Shabbos, what you do is you put them all together, and now the Shabbos is the tool. It reveals, you've got a bookshelf. Now I know what all these pieces of wood are for. Now I understand what this mitzvah is for, why I learned that bit of Torah, right? Why I had this test which I had to pass, why I failed here and I had to do teshuvah, I had to repent. I understand the whole picture now. It's all revealed, right? That's Shabbos. Beautiful. Shabbos is the reveal. It's a vessel, right? And of course, it's the seventh of the 7 Sephiras, and we know the 7th Sephira is Malchus, which is the one which reveals, just like we spoke about earlier on with the moon. Same idea again, right? Beautiful. Okay, hope you enjoyed that, and right, finally we finished the 6 days, the 7 days of creation, if you call it that, and then we're going to carry on next time with hopefully the rest of the book of Berieshis, which goes all the way until the beginning of chapter 6. Right, so we're going to carry on from, as we pointed out, chapter 2. There's no reason why this should be chapter 2. If anything, chapter 2 should really start here from verse 4, because these first 3 verses are actually the end of the creation, right? The last day of creation. And it's very interesting. The non-Jewish printers actually separated the sixth day from the seventh day. So it could be it's a bit revealing there. They don't like the idea of the Jewish way of looking at the world, that the 6 days of creation are there just to be expressed in the seventh day, right? They want to say, no, this physical world is a standalone, and heaven's just a different place you go to later. Where the Jewish idea is, no, they're connected together. The seventh day, the world to come, is just an expression and revelation of all the work, the hard work we've done in this world to be good people and to keep the Torah and the mitzvahs. So maybe that's why maybe subconsciously, or God arranged for them to decide to put the break in between the first and second chapter, according to they were working out exactly the place where we would have said that's the worst place to put the break between the first and second chapter, because you're literally splitting God's name apart. The Yud and the Hey on the last two words of the 6 days of creation and the first two words of the seventh day of Shabbos, they're meant to be together. Like we say in Kiddush, Vayerev Vayevoker, Yom HaShishi Vaychulu HaShomayim. You're meant to say that loud. Yeah, because that's God's tetragrammaton. And there you see the purpose of creation, where it's not Elohim, it's not God hiding himself anymore, it's the UK Vovke, the revelation where you see God is everything. Right, that's the UK Vovke, tetragrammaton, it's Havaya, existence itself. You see reality now, finally. And of course, Amalek, which is the enemy of the Jewish people and the enemy of God, what do? They try splitting God's name apart. Hopefully we'll see that that's already in Deuteronomy. Oh, right, okay, actually it's in Exodus. We've got quite a while to go before then, where we see that Amalek are the ones who split God's name in two. They say, yeah, good, you're very good. Up there, the Yud and the Hey, fine, but there's no Vav and the Hey down here. Get rid of the Vav and the Hey. We don't want God to be manifest in this world, right? And maybe that's why the non-Jewish, probably Christian, I'm guessing, printers, or the ones who decided how to put the chapters, how to split the book of Genesis into 50 chapters. Why they split it there? Maybe deep down they didn't realize why they were doing it, but some aspect of Amalek wanted to create that rift within God's name, possibly. Yep. But our job is to go through the darkness and show, no, verse 31 is connected with with chapter 2, verse 1. Is that right? Verse 31, is it? Yeah. Okay, thanks for listening, everyone, and we'll see you in the next video. Thanks for watching.